Now I'd like to call upon Dr. Stephen Goluboff to make the formal presentation on behalf of B'nai Brith to this year's award dinner.
Thank you, Randy. The only thing that's missing tonight is the little podium that makes me 6 inches taller, but maybe next year. For the past 42 years, B'nai Brith has honored an individual who has excelled in his devotion to make life better for others. Many of you are familiar with past recipients, and some have joined us tonight. This year is different. Our recipient is no longer with us and will not be able to accept the award and deliver a response. I suspect he is peering down from above, smiling and saying to himself, "I don't deserve this honor." How wrong he is. He was taken from his family, his friends, and his community by an irrational act of violence rarely experienced by any of us in such a personal way. I'm honored and moved to announce the winner of this year's We're Proud of You award tonight and share with you some of his accomplishments and the personal reflections of myself and others. In the shadow of 41 previous award winners emerges someone who is equally deserving of this honor, Mr. Ian Buckwold. Thank you. Thank you. Ian and I had a particular kinship, both born in the fall of 1948, both sons of pediatricians and loving and devoted mothers. We became lifelong friends, and unofficially the Goluboffs were part of the extended Buckwold family. Ian's educational journey began in Victoria School, the Saskatoon Hebrew School, and moved through Nutana, the University of Toronto, and the University of British Columbia, where he obtained his law degree. His work doing good deeds, and what we say in Hebrew, tikkun olam, or healing the world, began as a teenager, where he worked as a counselor at Camp Easter Seal, which was co-founded by his father, Dr. Alvin Buckwold. His brother Bruce says, and I quote, "Ian was deeply moved by the experience which fostered his lifelong interest in working with individuals with disabilities." When we were about 21 years old, Ian and I traveled through Europe, North Africa, and ended up working on a kibbutz in northern Israel. Ian's love of people and kindness to all occasionally caused me great consternation as he chatted up every security guard at every airport from Morocco to Istanbul to Israel, as if Ian and I needed to be particularly nice in case we had something to hide, which of course we did not. Following obtaining his law degree, he went in a direction which would not surprise anyone who knew Ian well. He joined the newly formed legal aid office in L'Orange, joined by a young articling student, Barry Singer, now a Saskatchewan judge. Ian's belief in, and here is another Hebrew word, tzedakah, or justice, drove him to help and defend a lot of good people at their worst. In Barry Singer's words, Ian's easy manner allowed him to quickly relate to his clients. His willingness to work hard for them was deeply appreciated, and his charm won him many friends. We all knew Ian was a talker. Barry goes on to say, Ian believed that everyone deserved a robust defense. With good humor, boundless energy, and optimism, he always tried to see the best in his clients and did not judge them. He believed there was always hope as long as you were talking. He was quite successful, but we never knew whether it was because of the quality of his arguments or whether or not the judge desired to end the proceedings quickly. During that era, much to the chagrin of the liberal and capitalist Buckwold family, Bruce says he became, quote, a lost soul and a socialist. Years later, he was discovered by Les Dubé and became a major player in the Concord Group, shedding some of his left-wing tendencies, but never abandoning his integrity and his kindness. After returning to Saskatoon, he practiced law with several firms. Bruce tells the story about that time that as they shared a house together, they had agreed that whoever got married first could purchase the house at its original price. Well, Ian met Mary Ellen on a ski trip in 1978, was married 6 months later, exercised his option, flipped the house for a tidy profit, all within 1 year. They soon were the parents of Jessica, Alvin, and Laura. Ian's belief in serving the community was recognized by the leadership at St. Paul's Hospital, where he served as a member, a vice chair, and finally the chairman of the board for several years. On a trip to Rome with Les Dubé and members of the hospital board, he became one of the only Saskatoon Jews to have a personal appearance with the Pope. Ian's work with B'nai Brith and the Jewish community has always been highly valued. With Ron Gitlin as his partner, Ian was key in making sure that the Silver Plate Dinner silent and live auctions were always successful, allowing B'nai Brith to continue doing its good work in the community. Who could ever refuse a request by Ian for the donation of a live or silent auction? I occasionally have private conversations with Ian, and he told me last night that after this award program is completed, no one should leave the room until the live auction has done its service and bids have risen to the highest level. Then and only then will the drinks be on Ian's tab. Possibly Ian's greatest accomplishment and lifelong legacy is the work that he and his wife, Mary Ellen, did in the area of mental health. Even before their own personal challenges, Ian served as the chairman of the Mental Health Review Panel for the Mental Health Act. This panel reviewed individuals who had been certified and ensured that their rights were being respected and that they had a fair hearing. It is no secret that they have a son who suffers from schizophrenia. When they were approached to be the honorary chairs of the Future in Mind campaign, allowing the creation and the building of the Les and Irene Dubé Center for Mental Health and Addiction, they stepped forward and bared their own souls about the tragedy and challenges of mental illness. I would like to quote Dr. David Keegan, former professor and chief of the Department of Psychiatry. Ian was down to earth and is a common sense person who tried to understand the issues of mental disorder and attempted to provide the care needed for treatment. He recognized the stigma of mental illness and tried in many ways to provide the best opportunities for care. He was ready to step forward to help in any developments which would put mental illness in the forefront of health care. He recognized the challenges, but sought to find answers in rehabilitation. He was the ombudsman for the development of care long overdue in Saskatchewan. Ian and Mary Ellen were the face of the Future in Mind campaign, which raised almost $11 million. Amazingly enough, the drive for donations exceeded that required for the center, and the rest of the funds initiated a community endowment fund in the RUH Foundation to be used for program development, education, and research in the field of mental health and addiction. For the third year in a row, B'nai Brith is proud to partner with the Saskatoon Community Foundation in creating a fund in the name of our We're Proud of You Award recipient. with the intention of that fund being directed to this RUH Community Endowment Fund. In the eulogy delivered by Ian's daughter, Jessica, she says, "Our dad always stood behind our brother no matter what, and we will continue to do that as our dad would have wanted. Throughout all of my brother's struggles, our parents stood behind him." Please allow me to quote my own personal reflections sent to Ian's family the day after his death, as I shared the grief and admired his accomplishments with 20 friends on a memorable golf trip in Scotland. As I walked down the fairway at Turnberry, overlooking the Irish Sea, I had Ian on my mind and in my heart for much of that round. I reflected, as many of you have over the past days, of our deep love and respect for Ian. He was my best and longest friend. I shared with him our experiences as children, teenagers, students, husbands, parents, and grandfathers. I had the honor of being his physician and witnessed his love for his entire family and his devotion and commitment to helping his son Alvin as he struggled with 12 years of tormenting mental illness. Any of us who knew Ian would have stories of his kindness, wisdom, and humor. We could all turn to Ian for advice and help, as he was always there for us. I know that when I golf again today, Ian will be carrying my bag, telling me what club to choose and what direction to aim for. Ian Buckwold was a person to whom we can all say, "We're proud of you." It's my honor to ask his brother Bruce Buckwold to come forward and accept this award.
Good evening, everyone. I am honored to accept this award on behalf of my brother Ian. Thank you, Stephen, for your very thoughtful and personal remarks about Ian, his work, what he meant for you, and to many others. He would have been embarrassed standing up here, but I know it would have meant a lot to him. If Ian were standing here, he would have started with a joke. It likely wouldn't have been very tasteful. It wouldn't have been appropriate, even in this setting. Wouldn't have been politically correct, but that was Ian. Ian was never worried about cultivating a very refined public image. He thought of himself as an ordinary guy. Stephen has spoken about the things that Ian did to help others, whether through his professional life, as a volunteer, or simply a friend or an acquaintance. And as I thought about what I would say tonight, I realized that Ian did none of those things for personal recognition. Ian was certainly not shy, as you know, but he was humble. He talked about the causes and the organizations he was involved in, but it was never about him. He didn't need to be a somebody in the community, and I don't think he ever thought he was special. He just saw things that needed to be done, and he did what he could, whether for his community, his family, his friends, or the person he met on the street. He genuinely liked people, cared about people, a quality that not only motivated his work in the community, but earned him an enormous amount and number of friends. I don't think Ian would ever have considered himself a role model, but if we all followed his example, the world would be a better place. This award would be especially meaningful to Ian because it highlights his commitment to erasing the stigma of mental illness and to building the understanding and resources so desperately needed to support the many people and families who struggle with it. He would have wanted all of us to be reminded of the pressing need to carry that work forward. This award would also be special to Ian because it comes from B'nai Brith, an organization with a proud history of both sustaining the Jewish community and building the wider community. Ian was not particularly religious in terms of formal observance, but his Jewish heritage was very important to him. No doubt his sense of responsibility for the welfare of others and his instinct for community building were rooted in the Jewish traditions and values in which he was raised. On behalf of Mary Ellen, Jessica, Laura, Justin, Casper, and the entire family, thank you to B'nai Brith for recognizing Ian in this very special way.